Have you ever noticed how she never texts you first? Yet somehow she never fully disappears either. She responds when you reach out. She keeps the door slightly open. She stays present enough to remain relevant but distant enough to never commit. She answers your messages. She reacts. She replies. But she never initiates. And that space, that quiet imbalance, does something subtle to your mind. At first you ignore it. You tell yourself it's nothing. You stay calm. But slowly, questions start forming in the background of your thoughts. Is she just shy? Is she busy with life? Maybe she's not the type to text first. Or maybe I'm reading too much into this. And then the question you don't want to ask creeps in. What if I'm just not important enough for her to reach out on her own? That question doesn't arrive loudly. It arrives quietly. And once it does, it changes how you show up. Most men don't realize this. But this exact situation is one of the most psychologically dangerous positions you can put yourself in with a woman. Not because she's doing something evil. Not because she's intentionally playing games. But because you slowly begin to abandon yourself just to keep the connection alive. You lower your expectations. You ignore your discomfort. You silence your intuition. You start carrying the entire weight of the connection, emotionally, mentally, energetically, while telling yourself you're just being patient, understanding, mature. And the longer this goes on, the more disconnected you feel from your own self-respect. Today, we're going to dismantle this dynamic completely. Not with manipulation, not with tricks, not with texting strategies designed to get her back. Because tactics don't fix broken foundations. Instead, we're going to use clarity, self-command, and psychological truth, the same principles Stoicism has taught men for centuries. I'm going to walk you through 6 Stoic shifts you must make when a woman never calls or texts you first. These shifts are not about chasing her. They are not about punishing her. They are not about forcing attraction. They are about revealing reality. And once you see reality clearly, without hope blinding you, without fear distorting your judgment, you stop suffering. Before we go any further, I want you to pause for a moment and be brutally honest with yourself. How many times have you felt uneasy, but ignored it just to avoid the risk of losing her? How many times have you justified her lack of effort instead of questioning why you were accepting it? How many times have you told yourself, it's fine, and when deep down, it didn't feel fine at all? That awareness right there, that moment of honesty with yourself, that's where power begins to return. Because the moment you stop lying to yourself, you stop giving your power away. If you're ready to stop operating from anxiety, if you're ready to stop chasing clarity from someone else, and if you're ready to start moving from strength, self-respect, and emotional control, like the video, subscribe to Stoic Lifeline, and let's begin. Shift 1. Stop feeding a dynamic that starves you. When a woman never initiates contact, most men react instinctively, not intelligently. They rush to fill the silence. They send the just checking in text. They call without a reason. They manufacture conversation because quiet feels threatening. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Every time you rush to fill silence, you tell her she never has to move toward you. You're not showing interest, you're removing incentive. Imagine this pattern. A man wakes up, checks his phone. Nothing from her. A subtle tension forms in his chest. So he sends a message, something harmless, friendly, low risk. She replies hours later, short, polite, closed. The next day, the same thing happens. And the next, and slowly, without realizing it, he trains her nervous system to expect him, without effort on her part. She doesn't lean in. She doesn't initiate. Why would she? He's already there. Human beings don't value what arrives without cost. That's not bitterness. That's behavioral psychology. The Stoics understood this deeply. What is given without boundaries loses weight. When your attention flows endlessly in one direction, it stops feeling meaningful. It becomes background noise. So the first correction is restraint, not coldness, not disappearance. Restraint. If she doesn't reach out, you don't rush to rescue the connection. You allow space to exist. Silence isn't something to be fixed. Silence is information. And the moment you stop covering silence with effort, it becomes loud enough to reveal truth. You're not punishing her. You're preserving yourself. Shift 2. Align your energy. Don't overpower the connection. Most men don't fail because they lack kindness. They fail because they overwhelm the dynamic with unbalanced effort. Attraction thrives on rhythm. Connection requires symmetry. When one person gives 10 and the other gives 2, something breaks. Picture this. You send thoughtful messages. You ask questions. You check in. You remember details. She replies occasionally, rarely asks anything back, never initiates, and instead of slowing down, you increase output, more effort, more presence, more availability. But here's what she experiences, not consciously but emotionally: pressure, imbalance, expectation. What you believe is consistency, she feels as weight. Overgiving doesn't come from confidence. It comes from fear. The fear that if you stop, she'll vanish. And women feel that fear even when you never say it. They sense urgency. They sense attachment to outcome. They sense when a man is trying to secure them rather than choose them. Stoicism teaches this clearly. What you chase controls you. So instead of overpowering the dynamic, you calibrate. If she texts warmly, you respond warmly. If she invests, you invest. If she pulls back, you don't compensate. You don't perform. Solo in a duet. Matching energy isn't cruelty, it's self-respect. And here's the paradox. When the right woman feels balanced energy, she moves closer. When the wrong one feels it, she fades, and that's not a loss. That's filtration. Shift 3. Take your emotional authority back. There's a moment almost every man recognizes. Instantly, even if he doesn't like admitting it. You send a message, then you wait. At first it's casual. You tell yourself you're not thinking about it, but a few minutes pass, then a little longer. You check your phone, put it down, pick it up again. Without realizing it, your attention is no longer yours. Your mood becomes subtly dependent on a response that may or may not arrive. When she replies quickly, you feel relief. Your chest loosens. Your energy lifts. When she doesn't, a quiet unease spreads. Your focus fractures. Your patience thins. And before you know it, your emotional state is no longer self-directed. You've outsourced it. This is the moment attraction begins to fade, not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly. Not because she's seeking control. Not because she's trying to dominate the dynamic. But because a man who hands over emotional authority stops feeling grounded. Women don't respond to emotional volatility when it's disguised as interest. They don't hear it in words. They feel it as instability. Picture a man sitting at his desk pretending to work. His phone lights up, just a notification, not her. His focus collapses. He tells himself it doesn't matter. But his nervous system tells a different story. He checks again minutes later, adjusts his posture, forces calm. She may never see this moment, but she feels its residue. It shows up in his tone, in the timing of his replies, in the subtle urgency behind his words. Stoicism teaches us something brutal but deeply liberating. No external event should command your inner state. Not a message, not a delay, not someone else's attention. Her reply is information, not validation. It tells you how invested she is in the connection. It tells you where she stands. It says nothing about your worth. The moment you internalize this, something inside you shifts. Your posture changes, physically and psychologically. You stop hovering over your phone. You stop monitoring silence like it's a threat. You return to yourself, to your work, to your body, to your goals, to your life. And here's the paradox most men never expect. When emotional hunger disappears, attraction often returns. Because grounded presence is magnetic. Because self-command is felt. Because a man who regulates himself radiates stability. Control your emotions, or someone else unintentionally will control how you're perceived. And the man who holds his emotional authority is the man no silence can shake. Shift 4. Let space reveal the truth. Many men believe that pulling back is what causes a woman to lose interest. They think distance equals danger. They think silence equals loss. So they stay close, constantly present, constantly available, constantly engaged. But the truth is far more uncomfortable. Never pulling back is what creates illusion. When you're always there, she never experiences contrast. And without contrast, nothing registers as valuable. Value is not created by excess. It's created by scarcity, timing, and space. Think about anything you truly enjoy in life. The more frequently it appears without pause, the less impact it has. Not because it loses quality, but because your nervous system adapts. Attention works the same way. When you're always available, always responding within minutes, always initiating conversations, always checking in, she never gets the chance to feel your presence. And if she can't feel your presence, she'll never feel your absence. You become familiar instead of meaningful. predictable instead of compelling. So the shift here is not emotional withdrawal. It's intentional restraint. You step back, not with resentment, not with drama, not to provoke a reaction, but with purpose. You stop flooding the space with messages, updates, and reassurance. You return to your own rhythm. You allow silence to exist without rushing to fill it. And then something revealing happens. If she genuinely values you, she moves toward you. She notices the gap. She checks in. She initiates. She bridges the distance herself. But if she doesn't, if the silence grows heavier and more obvious, understand this clearly. That silence was always there. You weren't creating distance. You were removing the effort that had been hiding the truth. Absence does not destroy real attraction. It reveals whether attraction was real at all. And once reality is revealed, you're no longer operating on hope. You're operating on truth. And truth, even when it's uncomfortable, is always freedom. Shift 5. Create space for her to show interest. One of the most confusing and emotionally draining situations a man can find himself in is this. She never initiates contact, yet she never fully disappears either. She replies when you reach out. She engages just enough to stay relevant. She gives you fragments of attention, never enough to feel secure, but never so little that you can walk away without doubt. Enough to keep hope alive. Enough to delay closure. And this is exactly where many men get trapped. Because technically she's still there, so you tell yourself a story. If she wasn't interested, she wouldn't respond at all. Maybe she just isn't expressive. Maybe she needs more time. And while you're explaining her behavior, something important happens quietly in the background. You become the engine of the entire connection. You initiate every conversation. You revive every silence. You sustain every emotional thread. And the longer this goes on, the harder it becomes to tell whether she's interested or simply comfortable being pursued. Here's the rule that changes everything. If something collapses the moment you stop carrying it, it was never mutual. That truth is uncomfortable, but it's liberating. Testing interest is not manipulation. It's not playing games. It's not emotional withdrawal designed to provoke a reaction. It's observation. You remove yourself just enough to see what happens when you're no longer doing all the work. You stop initiating. You stop following up. You stop being the one who keeps the interaction breathing, not with resentment, not with attitude, but with intention. Then you watch. Does she step forward into the space you've opened? Does she notice your absence and respond with effort? Does she check in, ask about you, or try to reconnect? Or does she remain comfortable in the silence, unbothered, unaffected, unchanged? Her response, or lack of it, answers every question you've been avoiding. No confrontation required. No emotional speeches. No explanations demanded. Her behavior speaks clearly when your effort goes quiet. And here's the shift most men never experience. When clarity replaces hope, anxiety disappears. Hope keeps you waiting. Hope keeps you guessing. Hope keeps you emotionally invested in what might be. But clarity brings peace. Because even if the answer isn't what you wanted, it's what you needed. You're no longer stuck in uncertainty. You're no longer negotiating with silence. You're no longer building fantasies on minimal effort. You see the truth, and once you see it, you're free to move forward with dignity. That's not loss. That's liberation. Shift 6. Elevate your standards above your fears. Eventually, this stops being about her behavior entirely. It stops being about whether she texts first, replies late, or keeps you guessing. At some point, the real question becomes far more uncomfortable and far more important. What are you willing to tolerate just to avoid being alone? Because when you accept minimal effort, you tell yourself a quiet story you may not even realize you're repeating. This is all I can expect. This is the best I'll get. If I ask for more, I'll lose her. That story doesn't just lower your standards. It reshapes your identity. It slowly convinces you to shrink, to accept less, hope more, and wait longer than you ever should. And here's the truth most men never confront. Men who operate without standards don't lack value. They lack self-trust. They don't trust that they can walk away and still be okay. They don't trust that something better exists beyond what's familiar. So they settle not because they want to, but because fear whispers that this is safer than starting over. Raising your standards isn't about becoming cold, demanding, or difficult. It's about becoming honest. Honest when effort isn't mutual. Honest when interest flows in only one direction. Honest when you're clinging to potential instead of responding to reality. Potential feels hopeful. Reality feels final. And many men choose hope because finality feels like loss. But Stoicism teaches us, Something crucial here. Clarity is never the enemy. Illusion is. A woman who truly values you doesn't leave you confused. She doesn't ration attention like a scarce resource. She doesn't make you prove yourself through endless effort. She shows interest freely. She meets you halfway without being chased. She invests because she wants to, not because she's convinced. Your worth is not proven by how long you can endure neglect. It's proven by how clearly you can recognize when something isn't aligned. Walking away from indifference is not quitting. It's not weakness. It's not failure. It is self-respect in motion. Because the man who can walk away from what doesn't honor him is the same man who will never beg to be chosen. And when you elevate your standards above your fears, something powerful happens. The wrong women fall away quietly. The right women step forward naturally. And most importantly, you stop abandoning yourself to keep someone else comfortable. That is the shift. That is the line you draw. And once it's drawn, you never look back. Conclusion: you were never meant to chase silence. If you've made it this far, understand something important. This journey was never about changing her behavior. It was never about forcing a text, triggering a reaction, or pulling someone toward you who wasn't already moving in your direction. This was about reclaiming yourself, about taking back the parts of you that slowly slipped away while you were waiting, hoping, overthinking, and trying to read meaning into silence. Along the way, you've seen something clearly, maybe for the first time. You saw what happens when you stop rewarding silence with effort, when you stop filling emotional gaps that were never yours to carry. You learned what changes when you align energy instead of overgiving. When you meet effort with effort, not fear. You felt the shift that comes when you take back emotional authority. When your mood no longer rises and falls with a notification. You understood why absence speaks louder than constant presence. Why space doesn't kill real connection, it exposes false ones. You saw how actions reveal truth more honestly than words ever could, and why clarity, even when it hurts, is always better than confusion that keeps you stuck. And finally, you remembered the power of standards. Not rigid rules, not arrogance, but self-respect strong enough to walk away from what doesn't meet you halfway. Because when you choose standards over fear, something fundamental changes inside you. You stop waiting for permission. You stop guessing what she feels. You stop shrinking yourself to fit someone else's indifference. Her silence no longer threatens you. It no longer controls you. It no longer defines you. It simply informs you. And a man who can observe reality calmly without panic, without resentment, without desperation, is a dangerous man in the best possible way. Dangerous because he can walk away. Dangerous because he doesn't negotiate his worth. Dangerous because he no longer confuses attention with connection. You were never meant to beg for interest. You were never meant to chase clarity. You were never meant to prove your value through endurance. You're here to live with intention, to move from self-respect, to choose peace over possibility. And here's the truth most men never reach. The right woman doesn't need to be convinced to care. She doesn't need to be chased into showing effort. She meets you naturally, willingly, and consistently because she recognizes your value immediately. If this message resonated with you, if something inside you shifted even slightly, then this wasn't just content. It was a reminder of who you are when you stop abandoning yourself. Subscribe to Stoic Lifeline if you're committed to staying grounded, disciplined, and emotionally sovereign in your relationships and your life. And if you've ever been in a situation where a woman never reached out first, share your experience in the comments. Someone else watching right now may need to hear it. With that said, thanks for watching, and until next time.